Shields up, Armbreakers. Rurikhan here coming at you with another video. Welcome back to Monster Hunter World Iceborne, and today I'm going to be bringing you a couple of tips for the Safi'Jiiva Siege. If my voice sounds a little bit tired, it's because I live streamed the entirety of last night and went to bed at like 7 a.m. this morning, and according to what people have told me, I slept through a fire alarm, so my brain was so tired it didn't even process the possibility that the building I was sleeping in could be on fire. So anyway, that is what's happening if you notice like, there's something different about Rurikhan's voice. He sounds like he's way too tired. But anyway, let's get into this. So the first question that a lot of people are going to have for this siege, I already know, is going to be whether or not can you solo it. And yes, you can solo it, very much like you could solo Kolv to Roth and the Behemoth event. You can solo this, but it is going to be a lot more work than, you know, playing it with 4 players or even with a lobby of 16 players, because the monster is scaled for multiplayer. Now, someone did tell me in my chat as I was doing my attempts on Safi'Jiiva that they had just soloed it. It was a bit of a pain in the ass, but that they were able to do it. So I guess it is soloable, but it sounds like a really boring proposition because I already kind of find it, you know, it takes a while for you to do things properly in a multiplayer environment. I can't even begin to imagine what it's like for a solo player, so I'm sorry. I know that a lot of people don't like to play with randoms. I know that a lot of people would rather play everything solo, but this is very much a multiplayer encounter. So I just thought I should remind you guys, for those of you that don't know how it works, but you can go to the quest gal in the Gathering Hub, or even, you know, on your quest board or whatever, and you can go to online session and you can search for online session. Then you can search by a match filter, and you can basically search for lobbies that are just running Safi'Jiiva, and you will usually be able to find quite a couple of lobbies if that is a possibility for you. If it is not, then I am sorry. There's nothing I can do about it, and we're going to get into the actual siege itself. So one of the other things people are going to be asking me, okay, Rurikhan, what weapon should I take? Because, you know, we have the guaranteed reward system and all that stuff, so I should probably take a weapon that I want to get rewards from. And as of the recording of this video, that is not how that works. So you can take whatever weapon you want to the siege. So you can pick whatever weapon you feel the most comfortable with, or whatever weapon you happen to feel is the most useful for the encounter at that time. And then before you collect the rewards of the siege, you just swap into the weapon that you want to get the guaranteed rewards from, and you can get the guaranteed rewards from you almost as if you had used that weapon in the siege. I don't know if this is intentional, so this could be something that is changed at a later date. I noticed this by a mistake, actually, in which I had done the siege using a gun lance, and then I swapped into sword and shield before collecting my rewards, and I noticed that there weren't any gun lances in the guaranteed rewards. There were quite a bit of sword and shields, though, so there you go. You can basically take whatever weapon you want, and then just swap it before you get to the rewards collection screen, and you just get that weapon, okay? So that's how that particular thing works. You don't have to stress about, oh, I got to take this weapon, even though it's not the most optimal thing. So there you go. Anyway, once you start the siege itself, this is going to work very much like Kolv to Roth. So it is going to be a shared lobby experience. If you're able to have like 16 players on a lobby, you're going to get more rewards. You're going to have better chances of finishing the whole thing faster. So I would advise you to go for those full lobbies if that is a possibility for you. Because basically whenever one of the groups breaks apart, the other groups get like a percentage of the points for that part. But if your group breaks that part as well, you get the full points, and you guys know how this works. The more points you get, the more rewards you're going to get, and you're also going to be able to pick up more weapons. Because I remember that in the trailer, not the trailer, but like the dev diary where they explained how this was going to work, they showed us that we could get 3 weapons. I've had a couple of situations where I was able to get 4 weapons, for instance. I believe that you can get much further, because I haven't really gotten to like the max tiers of rewards, because I'm still figuring a couple of things of the encounter, and I'm still experimenting with different weapons to figure out like the most optimal possible way of doing things. Because breaking parts in this particular siege is a little bit more challenging than Kolv. Like, it almost seems like after a bit, Kolv just like everything falls apart, like you sneeze in her general direction and her stuff just kind of like explodes. In the case of Safi'Jiiva, it is not like that at all. It takes quite a bit of effort and coordination to actually break some of these parts, and I would actually advise you guys to try and get some friends to do this encounter with, because having voice communication makes a massive difference so that you guys can kind of like focus on specific parts of the monster and try to get the best out of everything, like coordinating when you're going to get sleeps, coordinating when you're going to get paralysis, and other things to really try and break as many things as possible. Because like I said, the more things you break, the better your rewards are going to be. We'll be talking more about part break when we move forward, but for now, let's talk about the different stages of this encounter. So when you begin the siege, you're going to land at the top of the area, so you can still like do some prep work if you want to. You know, some people might have forgotten to eat or something like that, and there's going to be two ammo drops in that specific location. You will want to pick those up, particularly weapons that rely on ammunition, like for instance the gun lance. If you happen to bring a gun lance, there is a crystal burst spot. You want to make sure to pick up that crystal burst, load it into your gun lance, or maybe bows that happen to be using Thousand Dragons. You want to pick up those crystal bursts and put them in your bow, whatever. And there's also a pile of stones so that you can still have a couple of leftover ammunition. If you happen to have, you know, like in the case of the gun lance, you load this stuff into your lance and then you still have the stones to use, because there are mechanics that use ammunition in this first area of the encounter. So the first zone is a fairly straightforward zone, and there's two main areas that you have to pay attention to. If you look to your minimap, there's going to be an N on top that represents north. So if you are able to push Safi'Jiiva closer to the north area of this zone, you will be able to drop rocks on him. On the other hand, if you are able to push him into the southern area of this zone, there's like a vine trap-like mechanic, which basically, if you're able to flinch him on top of the vine-looking area, he is going to get stuck there, and that is going to be a massive opening for you to deal damage. Now you guys are like, but how do I get Safi'Jiiva to actually move to these different areas? You can kind of drive Safi'Jiiva while you are in this particular area. And the way you do it is you smack him on the side that you want him to move opposite of. So basically you smack him on the right, he's going to move to the left. You smack him on the left, he's going to move to the right. And this is generally pretty much whatever part you happen to smack him in. So for instance, if you shoot him in the wings, that's also going to count towards pushing him in the opposite direction that you're shooting from. If you hit him in the legs, that's going to count towards pushing him in the opposite direction that you're shooting from. I think the easiest way to get him to move is usually to strike his front legs. So using this particular mechanic, you will be able to kind of like steer the direction that the encounter is going to be taking the boss in, which allows you to basically move him north or south in direction of the stones that you can then drop on top of him, or in direction of the vines. If you're able to get him close enough to the stones where you can actually drop them, this is going to require a little bit of practice. The first couple of times that I shot the stones, I actually ended up missing, but this was all the way back in Recon, because you could practice this on the whole Recon thing. So if you're a solo player that is kind of doesn't want to go into a random group and mess up, you can practice this solo on the Recon thing. It is super easy to do. The Recon mission is super easy, and it does give you a good idea for the first two stages, but it doesn't give you an idea for what happens in the third stage. That's going to be a bit of a surprise for when you actually go into the final version of the encounter. So, yeah, you can push him to the north, and you can drop rocks on him. Now, an important thing about this is if you manage to drop the rock successfully on top of him, that is going to deal 4,000 damage. Now, this to me still is a bit of a double-edged sword, because I'm not sure if those 4,000 damage are actually dealing part damage on the monster, or if they're just hitting its HP. Because if they're dealing part damage, that is extremely useful. Like you smack him in the tail, that means you're going to have to deal less damage to the tail in order to cut it. Smack him in the head, so on and so forth. That's going to be good. But again, I'm not sure if that thing is actually dealing part break damage or it's just HP damage. And if it's just dealing HP damage, you could reach a point in the fight where you're not able to get as many breaks as you could potentially do otherwise. So that is something to keep in mind. There are two rocks in the northern section. You'll need to kind of like identify them. And when he is in range, you just shoot like a slinger ammo in there, and those things will drop, fall on top of him, deal damage. On the other hand, the vines is a much more straightforward thing. You basically just get him close to those vines by moving him south instead of moving him north. And if you're able to flinch him while he's on top of the vines, he is going to get staggered. I think that as the siege evolves and more people start going more meta at it, I kind of predict that we'll see more people taking him towards the vines and trying to get more damage in that way. But again, this is just a lot of speculation still because this thing only came out yesterday night, and I've only had, I've actually had quite a few hours of doing this, so I can't just say I've only had a couple of hours. It's more like I've had about 10 hours, actually even more than 10 hours of sieging that thing so far. I haven't even done the Horizon Zero Dawn stuff, but yeah, those are the mechanics on the first area. After you deal enough damage, after you reach a certain threshold, the monster is going to begin soaking up the energy of that area to heal himself. So each of the 3 areas is going to have like a certain amount of energy that Safi'Jiiva can draw on to heal himself. So he's going to heal himself, and then you're going to keep dealing damage. He might heal himself again. I don't remember exactly how many times he heals before he moves on, but eventually he'll drain the entire area, the entire energy of Area 1, and you'll move to Area 2. And then you'll go to Area 2 and continue the encounter, but they'll introduce a couple of new mechanics that you'll need to pay attention to. Mechanic number 1 is something very similar to the Ecliptic Meteor from Behemoth, so if you've done that encounter, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. You'll notice that there's a couple of, like, it's not really rocks, but there's like a couple of rock-like structures in the area, and you can use those to line of sight some of the monster's attacks. It is particularly useful if you need to, like, sharpen your weapon, if you need to heal yourself, because just moving away from Safi'Jiiva is not going to be enough because he has lasers that cover the entire area. And he will snipe the ever-living crap out of you. He does not care. Like, I've been sniped by Xeno'jiiva so many times. Like, I'll be way far away in the distance. Is like, nah, bruh. You think you're running away from me? No. He just, like, snipes you straight up. So you'll have to use these rocks for line of sight whenever you need a break to, like, sharpen your weapon or heal or anything of that nature. These are the rocks that you want to make sure that you pay attention to. And those rocks are going to be used in the Ecliptic Meteor-like mechanic where he kind of just like, you'll start this big AoE attack whenever he flies. Basically, whenever he flies, you got to get ready for a big AoE attack. You basically want to start scanning the area around you whenever it looks like he's about to take flight, because he's going to do the big AoE attack. And after you find a rock that you can hide behind, you hide behind that rock. Make sure that the rock is between you and the central impact point of the AoE attack. And then the AoE attack happens. It deals like a massive amount of... It's a one-shot, basically. There's no escaping that AoE attack. I think you can Final Fantasy XIV jump it if you want to, but there never really is a situation in the current iteration of this particular siege where you need to do that jump, unless there's a bug in the fight, because I've heard about this specific bug, but we're not going to get into bugs at this point. But yeah, there's that big AoE mechanic, so always pay attention whenever he takes flight. Now, there's also going to be a new mechanic introduced here, which is Aggro. He is going to have enmity very much like Behemoth. The enmity appears to be towards the person who is dealing the most damage at the time, so it doesn't necessarily require you to hit him in the head. It just requires you to be like what he considers to be the biggest threat at that point, and he will target you, and the game will tell you a message, hey, this person is being targeted. So you will kind of like start taking more attacks at you, which frees the other hunters to, deal more damage and so on and so forth. So you can kind of like have a tanking mechanic in there. And this one I actually kind of like, even though I haven't really done proper tanking all that much of this encounter, because everybody really does need to pitch in with damage, and taking a tanking set kind of hinders that. I think probably one of the best tanking weapons is going to end up being the heavy bowgun again with spread shot, with spread ammunition, but it's whatever. Now, an important thing about this aggro mechanic is that you can steal it. And this is very important because if he happens to target one of your gunners, like a bow user or a bowgun user, you'll want to take the aggro away from them, because due to the fact that they are gunners, they take more damage because their armor is lighter. You never want gunners to have aggro unless it's like a heavy bowgunner, like we talked about with massive shields and all of that stuff, because Safi'Jiiva will just like murder them. Like, I've seen them drop super fast the second they get aggro. And you can't steal the aggro with a flinch shot. Now, you can't flinch him into walls or anything like that, but if you flinch him in the second area, he is going to make the run forward like all of the other monsters do, but you'll instantly swap aggro to the person that flinch shot him, unless it's in the middle of an animation. This particular mechanic sometimes doesn't appear to work. Like, I've had a couple of situations where I flinch shot him and I didn't get aggro, but, basically there is an aggro mechanic in there, and the intention is that whenever you flinch shot, you steal the aggro towards yourself. Now, positioning is still not going to be the most important thing in this second area, apart from paying attention to ledges, because you can get mounts off on him, and it is a super easy mount to do. And you guys will understand that there's actually a particular mount that you should do throughout this particular fight, because there's a very easy part break to do if you do make one of these mounts. But yeah, you can get mounts off in this area because there's ledges and stuff. So if you try to position the boss appropriately, if you happen to be the tank, you can get your friends to mount, and you know, you can coordinate a little bit that way and get a lot of stuff done. There's also a new mechanic introduced, which is Safi'Jiiva gets this special grab attack. Now, he doesn't do it all the time, but it is important to recognize when he does do it. What he does is basically he lunges towards a target, and you can't block this attack. You might be able to dodge it, but I don't think you can dodge it with Temporal Mantle. I'm not 100% sure. But basically, he lunges towards somebody, and that attack is going to kill them, basically. There's nothing you can do to kind of like stop the fact that they're going to lose all their HP. They're not going to die instantly, but they will be left at 1 HP, the magic pixel, right? And what that attack does is he bites on you, and then he shoots you from his laser into the ground. After he shoots the player that was grabbed into the ground, that player is going to have no HP, and he's going to be on fire. So what that means is the second that he stands up, he's dead. So before that happens, someone in his team has to use a life dust. You should always be carrying life dusts regardless of what you're hunting. So there's no excuse for people not to have a life dust. I think you even get life dusts for free from the Steamworks. So everybody should always be carrying life dusts with them in multiplayer hunts. So it should be fairly easy for you to save your friend. I believe that whenever he gets grabbed, the handler shows up on screen. She says, "We have an emergency." And there's a message saying someone is pinned down. This is to let you know that the big attack is happening and that somebody is going to die unless somebody else intervenes. Now, again, the way that you prevent this from happening is you wait until the attack is over. You shouldn't heal him while he is being grabbed, because the grab attack is going to take him to 0 health. Doesn't matter what you do. So you wait until he does the grab attack to its entirety, and he shoots the player onto the ground, and the other player, the player that gets shot onto the ground, should not get up, because that's the first instant people are like, "Oh crap, I got to get up, I got to heal." Don't do that. Stay on the ground, because the second you get up, you're not going to be able to heal. You're going to die. You're going to burn to death and die. So you wait until somebody else heals you, and after you receive that heal, then you get up, and then you heal yourself. That's how that particular mechanic works. And don't be too shy about healing yourself friggin' fast. Pop max potion, do something. Because Safi'Jiiva is going to hurl you like across the map, and immediately after that, he's going to snipe you. So if you get up and you don't heal yourself or find a position to hide behind a rock like I told you earlier, he's going to instantly snipe you and kill you. So keep attention to that. So after a couple of AoE attacks that we talked about with the new AoE mechanic, he's going to start draining the energy of that spot as well. As you deal damage, he's going to drain the energy, he's going to heal himself again, and eventually he's going to run out of energy in that spot, and he's going to be going to the third area. And in the third area, you're going to have all of the mechanics that you have in the first area, all the mechanics that you have in the second area. And, I mean, you're not going to have the rocks in the first area or anything like that. I'm sorry. But you're going to have all the mechanics in the second area. He's still going to do his big AoEs. But the rocks are going to be dynamic. What does that mean? There's not going to be static rocks in the scenario. He will do certain attacks that will cause rocks to fall from the ceiling. When those rocks fall, they're going to hit you. They're going to, make you drop to the floor. They're not going to deal that much damage. But those rocks will be in the scenario. You can use them for a line of sight to avoid certain attacks that he does, and you will have to use them whenever he takes flight, because he's going to do the big AoE again. But after he does the big AoE this time, the rocks explode and they'll be gone until he eventually summons more rocks from the ground, which you can then... So basically the rocks will move from spot to spot depending on what happens during the fight. At least I think their positioning is dynamic. It could be static, but I think it's dynamic. But either way, it's not going to be super complicated, because dealing with this mechanic, usually what you do is whenever you see him take flight, you start scanning around your surroundings, and you find a rock to hide behind, and you hide behind that rock, and boom, Bob's your uncle. The biggest problem, and what might cause deaths with these AoE scenarios that I'm talking about, is if you happen to get stunned. So if you're someone that's getting getting hit a lot, one thing that can help you is get stun resistance level 3 so that you don't die when the big AoE comes, if you are dying to it at all. Now, there's another mechanic added in this area, which is whenever he does the big AoE, he's going to reveal these gas spots. You can usually see them. They'll be glowing green, and you'll have like green gas coming out of the floor. This is actually to your advantage. Now, you can use the aggro mechanic that I talked about in Area 2 to lure Safi'Jiiva close to these gas, and you can basically attack the gas area, and it'll explode, and it'll deal 1,000 damage. Now, the same caveat that I talked about dropping rocks on him applies. I don't know if these things are dealing part damage, or if they're just dealing hit point damage. So, depending on how much you are committed to breaking parts, you might want to consider whether or not this is working for you. I'm sure that at some point, other Monster Hunter channels that analyze this data a little bit more in depth, they will explain to people, okay, this is just HP damage, not part break damage, so keep that in mind when you're doing your hunt, so on and so forth. But at this point, I still don't know. And then there is an additional mechanic in the third area, which is the super critical state. Now, super critical state is particularly important because I believe he deals more damage, but overall, I didn't feel like the boss dealt too much damage throughout this fight, so long as your armor is fully upgraded. Like, he'll deal damage, but very few situations I felt like, oh crap, I got one shot. Like, that doesn't happen. It's more like he's relentless. So he'll just like keep coming at you until he kills you. It's not like he kills you in one hit all of a sudden. At least usually that doesn't happen unless you're running like Rocksteady Mantle or something along those lines, right? So when he gets into super critical state, he will deal a little bit more damage. I think he's going to be a little bit more aggressive towards the players, but he's also going to take more damage, and he needs to be in super critical state if you want to chop his tail. So keep that in mind. You need him to be in that state, and I believe he also needs to be in that state if you want to break his chest. So this is something that's going to happen in the third phase, so you have to plan accordingly. Like, you want to deal some damage. If you want to chop the tail, you want to deal some damage throughout the rest of the encounter, and then deal as much damage as you can when he goes into super critical to, you know, break tail, break, I think the head also takes additional damage if I'm not mistaken, and break the chest, and all of that stuff. And these are, I believe, all of the mechanics in the encounter. I know it might sound a little bit more complicated, me trying to explain to you mechanic by mechanic, but once you actually get into the raid, you'll see it's not that complicated. It's just important to know a couple of things. Now, I didn't go in depth into all of his moves. He has a bunch of moves because those I feel like you just have to learn them. You need to practice the different moves that he does, like when he slams his foot into the ground, and that just like does a massive AoE damage. Those are things that you're going to have to recognize and see how much damage they deal, if you can survive them or if you have to dodge them, or how you're going to deal with each of these things. I can't describe every little attack in great minutia. I'm just describing like the big major wipe mechanics that can happen in the raid. Again, here I go with this word. Siege. So now I might be wondering, okay, so what are the pieces that I can actually break in this monster? And you can break the head, you can break the back, you can break the wings, you can break the chest, you can break the tail, and you can break his 4 legs. The wings, by the way, are 2 separate breaks, the left wing and the right wing. Just adding a little post-recording commentary here. In case you haven't noticed by the amount of time that I've said the words part breaks in this video, you should probably adapt whatever set you are using to include 3-piece part breaker if you want to get the maximum possible rewards from this particular event. And breaking all of these things is going to give you a lot of bonus points. There's also points for just like reaching the different stages of the fight. So you draw energy from when Safi'Jiiva draws energy in Area 1, that's a couple of points. When he completely drains energy off of Area 1, that's more points. Same thing for Area 2, same thing for Area 3. When he goes into super critical state, that's more points. So like every kind of like event that takes place in the siege is going to give you points. But then getting the breaks is going to give you bonus points, and this is what you want to focus on. Very much like Call of Roth. You want to focus on breaking as much as you can. Now, when it comes to the head, bowguns with sticky ammo definitely come in handy. So if you have a friend that happens to play a bowgun, and if he does, he most likely plays stickies because every bowgun user plays stickies. Those stickies are going to be very good for breaking the head. Hammer can probably smash the head great too, but I don't consider myself to be good enough with the hammer to really go after the head, so I end up not using the hammer in this particular fight. The tail can be chopped naturally with any weapon that has sever damage, so you're talking about your great swords, your long swords, your dual blades, anything that has chopping damage can chop that tail. Just remember that in order to actually pop the tail off, you're going to need to be in supercritical state, so you can damage it throughout the encounter, but you can only cut it off when he gets the supercritical state, so plan accordingly. When it comes to breaking wings, in my opinion, bows are going to be your best friend. This is because on the first couple of raids that I did, we had Driz98, who's a very good light bowgun player, and he was just like spamming those wings with sticky, and those wings would not break for the life of him. Eventually, he broke them when we got to Area 3, and it was insane. Like, it was the whole fight just like lighting them up like Christmas trees. There was actually a point where Safi'Jiiva spread open his wings, and I looked at him like, oh, look, it's a Christmas tree. It's just like chuck full of stickies, and those wings would not break. On the other hand, I then, earlier today, had Kegrin come with me with a bow, and Kegrin, like, just the two of us, it wasn't even 4 players, just like the 2 of us, and he just busted up both wings before we even finished Area 2. So bows are probably going to be the best ones at busting wings. And even if you do use light bowguns to break wings, I think you probably shouldn't be using stickies because I think they don't work that great for breaking the wings. Use some other kind of ammunition, maybe slashing, maybe something else. I don't know. I don't do bowguns personally, so I wouldn't know. But, like, use a different ammo. Maybe even normal ammo might be better than some of the other stuff. So, again, I don't know. You'll have to test it out, figure it out for yourself, because I don't do ranged weapons all that much. But the wings are definitely intended to be busted by ranged weapons. I wouldn't even go after, like, insect glaives for the wings. Insect glaives, I'd go for, like, the tail and stuff like that. For the wings, I would definitely try to go for ranged weapons. If you don't have them, I'd probably not even focus on breaking the wings unless you need them for something. Like, you might need them for the armor set, which is annoying at that point. But, hey, man, it is what it is. Continuing onwards, breaking the back, that is super easy. Basically, get a mount and finish the mount on his back, and most likely you're going to break the back. Like, I just did it earlier in some of the footage that you will be watching. You'll probably see me, like, with the switch axe, bam, breaking his back, boom, done, bada bing, bada boom, no problem. Breaking the legs, on the other hand, that was a pain in the ass. And I know that some people probably like, oh, we broke the legs first time. Yeah, it depends on what you are dedicating yourself to. And the legs are also fairly low in terms of how many points they give you. So I would actually only advise you to go for the legs after you get other more important targets. In my opinion, you should go for breaking the head, breaking the back, breaking the wings, breaking the tail, breaking the chest, and then you might want to think about the legs because, you know, that's just the way that it goes. In terms of the chest is a bit of a pain in the ass to break, and I believe that he also needs to be in supercritical state for you to actually break his chest. I think that the best tools for that particular job are going to be the switch axe and the charge blade because of their respective movesets. Maybe the lance as well, but the lance, I kind of feel like the lance, the damage of the lance isn't really there, and you need a ton of damage to really bust this down. But maybe I'm just not good enough with the lance. But it is in a position that would be good for the lance, so I don't know. Maybe it will be good for the lance as well. But like switch axe and charge blade, I think are probably the best candidates to breaking the chest. I've done it personally with the gun lance, but playing gun lance in this fight is not something that I would advise. And some of you might wonder, well, why? I mean, you're a gun lance main. Why wouldn't you want to? It's because this is a really big monster. And basically you put your wyvern stake down and then you just end up chasing it in a way that's like, oh, the monster decided to turn 90 degrees. That's like, I don't know, 10 seconds of you running. And then you get there and he turns 90 degrees in a different direction. It's another 10 seconds of you running. Wasted time. It's just not particularly fun. Like, some people might be able to get fantastic times with the gun lance. They might be able to do gangbusters with it in that particular boss. I find it to be quite a bit of a hassle chasing after the wyvern stake in this boss because he's so big, and any minor alteration in his movement, in his direction, in his position, and you're just basically not dealing damage, or you're dealing suboptimal damage because you're not hitting the wyvern stake. I don't know what their plan is with the gunlance for this, but I've done it. Like I've actually done a lot of runs with gunlance, and you can do it. It is doable, but I just found that it wasn't fun. My recommended weapon for this is if you're a melee guy like me, I would go for the switch axe. Switch axe is really good because you can do a lot of zero-sum discharge clutch attacks, because there's a lot of points where he's vulnerable and he is not able to get you out of there. And also, even when he does dismount you, he usually doesn't deal that much damage. So you're able to just risk clutching the head a lot of times and do zero-sum discharges on the head, zero-sum discharges on the tail, zero-sum discharges on the legs. Not to mention that you also have like the power axe mode, which will deal significant damage and flinching and all of that stuff. So I think the switch axe was the weapon that I felt like I was being the most useful with. Sword and shield I also thought was really good because you could basically wound things for everybody with almost zero effort. Like light bowguns as usual, they're pretty good for busting up heads. But yeah, other than that, it's like whatever you feel like, bring it. I don't think it's going to be one of those things where you have to bring these weapons or you can't do it. It's not really at the same level that we were when we did like Extreme Behemoth. I don't think it's at that level of mechanics that you really need to respect, or you're going to get completely womboed. But, you know, it is somewhat challenging, particularly if you want to break stuff. I mean, if you're just doing it to kill him and you don't care about the number of rewards that you get, then it's whatever. You can go in there and not really care. But if you want to, you know, optimize your runs and try to break as many things as possible, you know, you want to try to optimize things a little bit, pay attention to mechanics, and try to break stuff and try to adapt the weapons that you're bringing into the fight. But anyways, these are my tips for the encounter itself. I know that some of you will want to know more about awakened weapons and such, and the conclusions that I've gotten with experimenting with that. I'll be doing a separate video for that because this one is already long enough, wouldn't you say? Anyway, I'm going to shut the hell up, let you guys get on with it, and go ahead and enjoy this pretty fun siege encounter. I'll also be doing like an opinion video later about how I feel about this encounter and the rewards and all of that stuff. But first, let's get you guys sorted out in terms of guides and stuff like that, and then we'll talk opinions. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, like it. If it helped you out in any way, really like it, because it does help me out a lot when you like these videos. If you did not enjoy the video, hit the dislike button. Let me know why you didn't like it in the comment section. Comments and feedback are always appreciated. Thank you very much for watching. Stay strong, and may your shields never break.